We've all heard about it. Last week, a protest move by Kilkenny and Dublin senior camogie teams to wear shorts instead of the regulatory skorts almost saw the match being abandoned.
Joining us now to discuss this controversy is Dublin Camogie Captain and co-chair of the Gaelic Players Association, Aisling Maher, alongside Labour TD and chair of the Oireachtas Sports Committee, Alan Kelly. Good morning to you
folks.
both. Thank you so much. Aisling, listen, let's start off with you. You're a member of the Dublin team. Yourselves and Kilkenny decided to warm up and play the match in shorts. What happened?
Yeah, so I guess, you know, everybody's probably heard at this point, we had our vote in Congress in last year, 2024, where the vote on two motions, one to introduce the option of wearing shorts and the second to replace the skort with a pair of shorts. Both were defeated separately in Congress last year. Huge frustration, obviously, from a player perspective last year, seeing that not go through because it had been an issue in playing rules for the last number of years.
Can I just ask you there, when it's defeated, something like this, Aisling, when it's defeated in Congress, who's defeating it? If the players, 83% of players have asked, the people who are playing this week in, week out, have said, I want the choice. Who is it? Because we've asked someone from the Camogie Association to come on here and talk to us about why they're not allowed to do it. So who has defeated it?
Yeah, so there would be delegates that would be sent from each county board. So from all of the counties in Ireland, depending on their size, their playing membership, they'd have a certain number of delegates that they would send to vote on motions in Congress. And then the likes of Great Britain and Europe would get to, USA would get to send a number of delegates as well. So they're not players. The vast majority of them aren't, and definitely not present players anyway. The players have no voice at it. So, like, the Gaelic Players Association don't have speaking rights or voting rights at Congress. We would have no say, and there would be a number of motions that would be brought up. I guess theoretically, delegates are voting on behalf of the players and the association and the membership. The reality is there's often a disconnect between how the delegates vote and how the players feel, as is obviously become increasingly clear from this vote that was done last year. So I guess last year, when that didn't pass, there would have been communication between the Camogie Association and the Gaelic Players Association to say, look, we can see the frustration, we can see this hasn't gone the way you would have wanted or expected, but work with us and give us time and give us space, and let's do this in an amicable way that doesn't lead to protests. And we would have said, yeah, OK, let's work together, let's find a solution here. And I guess we're now fast forward, 12, 13, 14 months since then. Gaelic Players Association have come out with their report that you're mentioning there, which very clearly highlights 83% of players want the option of wearing shorts. 70% of players do not feel comfortable wearing the skorts. They don't feel that they're appropriate for athletic performance. And meanwhile, Camogie released a report that effectively says we're working very hard at creating a better skort.
OK.
Creating a better skort, and you're going, we have shorts, lads, that's a better skort.
Well, it takes to the players to make a stand, which is what you did.
Unfortunately, it's come to that point, where we just felt, look, we're not being heard, we're not being listened to. They're off developing a better skort when we want the option of wearing shorts, which led last week, I suppose, to ourselves and Kilkenny being in communication and saying, do you know what, we actually just don't feel we're being listened to or respected as players here, and we want to wear shorts, and we're sick of people telling us what we have to wear when we're playing our sport. So we made the decision to go out wearing shorts for our Leinster semi-final last week.
Then what was it like with the referee? The referee is just enforcing the rules, right?
Yeah, I feel for the referee. It's not his fault personally. He's enforcing the rules that have been given to him. Obviously, there's no blame being put on him in these circumstances. But I guess I was hoping that when 60 odd of us went out on the pitch, that he would say, lads, this is not my problem, I'm reporting this to Camogie, let them deal with it at a higher level with the county boards that are involved. Unfortunately, that wasn't the approach that was taken on the day. He allowed the warm-up to continue, and we got to the end of the warm-up, myself and the Kilkenny captain went in for the coin toss, and he informed us at that point that he could see that we were wearing shorts and that he would not be proceeding with the game until every player had turned and gone back into the dressing room and changed into a pair of a skort.
So the match would be abandoned?
Yeah.
That's the level that he was willing to take it to?
So, I asked what would happen if we stayed in the shorts and refused to change, and he said we had 15 minutes to change and then the game would be abandoned. OK. You obviously did change.
Yeah.
The match went ahead. But listen, I think that the outrage and the stand that you took has done the business. Alan, from your point of view as chair of the Oireachtas Sports Committee, I mean, what do you make of this situation?
Can I say I'd rather if the Camogie Association was sitting here instead of me answering questions, firstly.
Yep.
I come from this perspective as my daughter Ava, she's 15. Camogie's her life. It's like I'm constantly at Camogie training sessions, Camogie matches. You know, if I was at home yesterday even, I'd been at another one. So I'm taking her perspective, her friend's perspective, the girl she goes to school with. And basically, all the time they're training in shorts. And like the big panic in our house before a match is, where's this bloody skort? Where is it? Because it's never used outside of being thrown on for a match. And she'll tell you straight out that, you know, she's a halfback. She's very competitive. She's very, very competitive. She's, you know, always stuck in there, lots of time on the ground, and she gets up and she's to fix the skort. It gets in the way. It's just, firstly, it's not practical. It's demeaning, in my view. And I think in modern times, basically, players should be given the option of what they want to wear, and the overwhelming majority are going to wear shorts. I think this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever had to probably intervene in. I was asked about this as chair of the sports committee. Obviously, I have my own, personal interest because of my daughter. But like, this should be sorted out immediately. I shouldn't have to have a situation where I go to my committee members and say, look, we have to bring in the Camogie Association and ask them why they are treating players like this. And the Camogie Association have done a lot of good things. There's some good changes they brought around in relation to actual games and everything. But like, this has to be sorted out immediately. If they don't respect the players, I'm a huge supporter of GPA. If they don't have players, they don't have an organisation. No. And if they all go and protest this weekend, and I will support the players who are going to wear shorts this weekend, if they all go and protest, it'll just have to be changed. Within the rules, they have an exceptional circumstance. They can use that rule up until next year. And obviously the president is saying they'll change it possibly next year. Well, then that's just the way to sort it. And let's all move on and support the players and support the games, because this is ridiculous.
So this is, what you've said is interesting. First of all, Cork and Waterford have said in the Munster final this weekend, they're coming out there saying, we're wearing shorts, that's it. They have decided to take up your mantle in relation to this in a protest. You said there is an exemption to this rule. So there is an exemption that the Camogie Association can bring in, whereby they do not have to wait until Congress in 2027 to change this rule.
Yeah,
they could do this.
They could introduce a derogation which would basically allow the association to move away from strict adherence to a rule where it's not in the best interests of the association. So that would basically allow a derogation to Rule 6B to introduce the option to wear shorts in competition as well. And we have seen this happen before. Unfortunately, I was involved as well back in 2015 when we had the infamous coin toss saga, where ourselves and Clare finished level on points, and strictly speaking, the next order in the rule book was for there to be a coin toss for who would proceed into the quarterfinals. And at that point, we introduced a derogation. So it was another time where we could clearly see that this rule was not benefiting players, not benefiting the organisation, not doing what was best for a game. And we introduced a workaround to temporarily not adhere to that rule. So it could be done here.
Listen, and all the time I hear about girls and women stepping away from sport. You know, and this is something we're wanting to promote. More girls taking up sport, but if they're feeling uncomfortable about wearing this skort, what is it the difference between camogie and football? Because the women's football team are allowed to wear shorts. They do. You see them in shorts. What is it about camogie that there has to be skorts?
And it's one of the biggest barriers for keeping young girls in camogie, especially, right? Because most kids go in and they play LGFA and they play camogie. The first few years, they're playing both in shorts and there's no trouble. Obviously, camogie, from a technical perspective, I'm biased, I'll admit it from the start, but it is a little bit trickier. There's a bit more skill involved. You need a hurl and a jab lift and a throwing the ball up and striking it. So it's just another barrier that we're putting in place for girls who are playing both. And it's another reason for them to pull away from the camogie and go into the LGFA.
It should be more, the Camogie Association, in my view, should be thinking more about if this is an inhibitor, if this is a barrier, if this is something that's actually stopping 1, 2, 3, 4 young girls from playing camogie. That's a bigger issue.
Too many.
It's too many, and that's a bigger issue they should be dealing with than this archaic view of that there has to be a skort to basically define gender, which is it's just mind-bogglingly wrong and stupid.
It's incredibly gendered. It's really frustrating. I've heard an awful lot of people have opinions on it, even on my Instagram. Fellas going, well, what's the big deal? I'm like, well, then you put on a skort. You go around and have a wedgie as you're trying to play a game of sport for 15 minutes. Like, are you frustrated about the amount of people that have opinions when you're like, I am a high-class athlete here. I'm at the top of my game.
We see it every now and again where one of the girls' fiancés will go on his stag and the joke will be they'll dress him up in a skort before they go on the stag, because obviously she's the camogie player. And every lad, without fail, who puts one on for a stag comes back to me and said, geez, I have a newfound sympathy for you now, I have a newfound respect for you now. like, if anyone has any question about it, please put one on. Like, but
that's interesting, because I actually wanted to see them today to see.
Well, we meant to ask Aisling to bring hers in, because much like Donncha O'Callaghan's red knickers, it's the most famous skort in all the land. Like, it is.
You can have it.
You can have it. Well, hopefully hopefully you won't need it for much longer, or I mean, you have the option to not have to wear it. So
this needs to be sorted out this weekend.
Okay.
I mean, I don't want to be in the scenario where I'm going to my committee members and say, look, we have to bring them in to talk about this. It would be, it would be incredibly crazy and ridiculous if that was the case. Absolutely. So
we're wanting to see more people involved in sport, and something like an inhibitor like this just seems so backward.
But fair play to Dublin Camogie, who have instructed its referees to allow games 100%. To go ahead this weekend if people are playing.
These referees
skort.
in difficult situations, so I mean they've
a bit
taken
of
that away
sense.
from them.
Ashley, we'd love again, of course, to hear from you on this. Let us know your thoughts on it. Ashley Maher, the Dublin Camogie captain and co-chair of the GPA. Thanks so much, and Alan Kelly, Labour TD and chair of the Sports Oireachtas Committee.